Hello, everybody. It's Walter, your favorite historian, educator, professor, and social studies extraordinaire, here today to give you a 5-class follow-up as to where we are in Baltimore and the Civil War. Today, we discussed several things. First being the immediate aftermath of the Baltimore riot of 1861, also known as the Pratt Street Riot. We discussed the occupation of Baltimore by the United States Army under the command of Brigadier General Benjamin Franklin Butler, and the arrest and detention of thousands of Baltimoreans and Marylanders suspected of treason and disloyalty. So in the immediate aftermath of the Baltimore riot of 1861, we see the state governor of Maryland and the mayor of Baltimore plead with President Lincoln to send no more troops through the city. You know, a plea that is rebuked, as obviously troops had to go through Maryland to get to Washington, D.C. All right. And given the tense situation in Baltimore, it became prudent that no more Union troops be attacked on their way to the nation's capital via Baltimore. So it became the duty of Brigadier General Benjamin Franklin Butler to establish a bypass route from Baltimore, all right, to be able to get to Washington, D.C. That bypass would be known as the Annapolis Junction. So Butler would land his troops in Annapolis and fortify and essentially establish a new rail link between the capital and Annapolis that fully commenced operations by roughly around the end of April of 1861. And that bypass would guarantee the safety of Union troops that were coming from the north, going through Maryland to get to Washington, D.C. All right. In this era, also, thousands of Union troops were pouring into the state of Maryland to essentially secure it and guarantee that Maryland would not leave the Union. All right. And these events, you know, obviously stirred up a great deal of dissension and discontentment in the state of Maryland, which essentially wanted to remain neutral in the American Civil War. However, given its location in surrounding the nation's capital, being neutral was not an option. Maryland was going to be Union, whether it liked it or not. Okay. And to quell the lots of disgruntled calls from many elements in the state, primarily on the Eastern Shore and Southern Maryland, for secession, Governor Hicks would call a special session of the Maryland General Assembly to meet in Frederick to vote on secession, something that it rejected by a vote of 53-13. Thank goodness for the state of Maryland that such proposition was rejected. Okay, but at the same time, the General Assembly also voted to not reopen rail links with the North, and also begged President Lincoln to stop sending troops into Maryland to occupy the state. All right, Lincoln did not oblige any of these requests, which takes us back to Butler. All right, Butler had been ordered to secure the rail links at Relay House, which is just outside of Baltimore in modern-day Lansdowne, one of the most important rail links on the B&O line between Baltimore and D.C. All right, the most important one outside of Baltimore, between Baltimore and D.C. And essentially, in securing Relay, Butler decided to embark on a very, shall we say, ambitious move and also occupy the city of Baltimore. Now, that was not what he was told to do. Butler acted completely without authorization, and on the night of May 13th, 1861, he snuck into Baltimore by train with 1,000 troops. It was a driving rain going on, so he had to move quickly and he had to move concisely. All right. And so under the cover of darkness on the night of May 13th, he and his 1,000 troops established a fortification on top of Federal Hill. All right. And they lined the top of the hill with guns, cannons specifically pointed at all sides of Baltimore City. All right. Capable of shelling the city at any point. All right. And when the people of Baltimore woke up on the morning of May 14th, lo and behold, they literally found themselves under the gun. Butler's purpose for occupying Baltimore should be pretty self-explanatory. First, he wanted to ensure that with the state's showpiece city and most important center of commerce under occupation by the U.S. Army, it would all but guarantee that Maryland would not even give any more thought to leaving the Union. Number two, it was to dilute the large amount of pro-Confederate sympathy in the city. Next, Butler's occupation would ensure the safety of the city of Baltimore from potential Confederate attacks. And last but not least, it was to stop the flow of illegal goods coming from Baltimore going to the south. All right. So with that in mind, Butler's occupation of Baltimore was very controversial, something he again did without any authorization or orders. And he was subsequently removed from command by the War Department under the authority of Simon Cameron and General Winfield Scott. Butler would be reassigned to command in Virginia, but the fortifications in Baltimore would remain for the rest of the Civil War and be expanded upon, folks. And in the early days of the Civil War, all right, between 1861 and 1862, you see hundreds, if not thousands, of Baltimoreans, including Mayor Brown, the entire city council, the chief of police, all right, and including a U.S. congressman, Congressman May, a Democrat from Maryland, arrested and imprisoned, all right, for even the mere suspicion of engaging in disloyal acts, all right? There were lots of people in Baltimore during the Civil War, folks, who actively, and not just with words, who actively supported the Confederacy with goods and with money, all right? And the occupation of Baltimore City by the Union Army was designed to put that mess to bed. And for the most part, it did, all right? Would you still, beyond question, had lots of incidences of smuggling, but for any organized supply lines going to the south via Baltimore, that was shut down, as every single Union commander that followed Butler in the early days of occupation, most notably General John Adams Dix, had this city on lock. Try around with treasonous activities if you wish. You would be jailed and detained, all right? And that is about where we concluded with the tenure of General Dix, who all but ensured that the Unionist candidate for governor of Maryland in 1861, Augustus Bradford, would win the election, primarily by stuffing ballot boxes, intimidating voters, and stuffing the boxes, even more specifically, I'll add, with ballots from soldiers from other states. But hey, you got to do what you got to do. These were desperate times, and we needed to make sure that not even the slightest possibility of an anti-union and pro-secessionist candidate would be elected governor of Maryland to further interfere with operations, all right? And so with a unionist in charge of Maryland, Augustus Bradford, we had a great deal more cooperation with Union war efforts in the state for the rest of the Civil War, all right? And that's about where we concluded this class. Another homework assignment was given, which I'm sure the class will do very well on, and we adjourned for the day. All right, so that is where we are as of class 5 on this day, September the 26th, 2023. So thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions or controversies, leave them down below, and I'll be happy to answer them. Take care of yourself. Stay safe out there. Dream, try, and do good. Professor Shelton, out.